We are live now, and I am happy that I don't sound like a munchkin anymore. Hi, Tom.
Hello, Ashley. Nice to finally hear you, the real you.
I know. For those that have been watching my podcast, I've had some audio issues. Sometimes I sound lower than myself. Sometimes I sound higher. And now Tom is actually hearing my voice, my real voice, for the first time. So this is great. My audio is not ideal because I may sound a little echoey, but we're gonna have to roll with it. So we're gonna roll.
It's fine. Everything is perfect.
Yeah, well, and you have to hold your mic, right?
And so I have to hold my mic. So
we both kind of had a little thing.
The struggle is real today on a Wednesday.
Yes, on a Wednesday. Is it Wednesday already? Gosh,
I think it is.
The days of the week seem to go by me because I work from home. So it's just keep going. Sometimes it's Friday and I blink and I'm like, what the hell? And sometimes it's Monday and I can't really tell the difference.
But you know what? As they say, time is an illusion, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a man-made construct.
I know. It's pretty bizarre when you think of it that way, because we hold ourselves to time way more often than I think we think that we do. The simple work week, Monday, right. Friday, Monday, Friday, Monday, Friday. Yeah. We get so wrapped up in it. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait a second, I don't have to be stuck to this Monday, Friday thing if I don't want to. But I think we get so brainwashed and so programmed into that.
Absolutely. And there's a quote from, this is a really obscure movie reference, but I'm a huge Star Trek fan, and a long time ago, there was a movie called Star Trek Generations, and I know I'm such a nerd. Look at my Deadpool hat. But
love it.
So in this movie, the main villain, he's obsessed with trying to get back to his family and trying to enter a time vortex to go back in time and save his family, and that's his motivation as the villain. But the quote that he said, which has always kind of stuck with me, he says, "Time is the fire in which we all burn." And that kind of struck a chord with me because it's so true, because we often equate time, or we trade time for dollars, you know, when we're working in our work life, our 9-to-5 life. And in reality, it's time that is the true currency. And yet it's kind of this intangible prison, which we're all kind of held. But really, we actually have the keys to that prison cell,
but we don't realize that we do sometimes.
Right. We're both the inmate and the warden in that prison cell, and really, in reality, the door is left unlocked.
I think it comes to the greater picture of understanding that we even have a choice on things even outside of our time. It's crazy as I've gone through my transformation, and I'm so excited to hear about yours, but you realize more and more and more as you open yourself up to healing and just open your awareness, you realize how much you've been tied down by all these constructs, all of these programs, all of these societal things that have been like you've been brainwashed with. And it's liberating but alarming as I go down my journey. Like I was telling my friend in one of the podcasts I did recently, I'm surprised some of the information I've learned, as I'm sure you've learned too, I'm surprised it's not like on billboards everywhere.
Right.
But yeah. It's so, I'm so excited to talk about health today. Health is like, I've been through a journey of a couple of years of just diving into my stuff. So I would love to start to hear about you and your journey. I found you a long time ago, and when I was just starting to get into learning about holistic healing and natural healing, you know, I have a past with, I kind of had an anxiety. My anxiety kind of cracked open in early 2015. And I went down this downward spiral of feeling like I was out of control of my body. I felt like my body was taking over me. And I had panic attacks. I was in and out of the urgent care. I had infections. My diet was terrible. I just feel like my body was freaking out. I just wasn't giving it the attention that it needed. And so what happened was after multiple doctor's visits, multiple cycles of antibiotics for like urinary tract infections, sinus infections, I kept getting sick. I for some reason had some sort of switch in my mind that was like, this isn't the answer. Like I need to take control of my life right now. This isn't working. And so that sort of set me off on this whole path of discovery to taking control of my health and learning about everything that I learned with holistic medicine, healing myself with herbs, cannabis. And I didn't have cancer. That's a whole nother ball field, but we are parallel in that I feel aligned with you in taking control of your health. So if you want to start just talking about your journey, I would love to hear about pre-cancer, your diagnosis, and just your thoughts around that and what really caused you to decide to take control of your health, because some people get cancer and they just listen to doctors. So what was the difference for you?
Well, really my cancer story starts years before I was diagnosed, because leading up to that time, I was very sick, internally and externally. So looking back, I can now see that I needed a total healing, and it wasn't just a physical healing, but I needed a healing on multiple levels, mind, body, and spirit. So I live in San Antonio, Texas, born and raised, and I love it here, but we typically rank among the top 5 of the most unhealthy cities in the country. And that's because, we have a lot of delicious Mexican food here, but we also have, margaritas, and we've got, soda and all this unhealthy food. And I grew up eating all that stuff. And not margaritas. I mean, I was too young for that. But so I grew up on a diet of fast food, junk food, sodas, and just really, really unhealthy. And, life has a way of putting these messages in front of you and these signs. And I started getting sick at an early age. It started out with like pre-diabetes. I mean, I gained probably so much weight, and it's gone, thankfully, because of the way I eat now. But I ballooned up to a little over 250 pounds, which I'm not very tall. That's why I wear a hat and boots. But so I'm not very tall. I'm about 5'6", 5'7" on a good day. And so anytime that I gain a pound, you can immediately see it. And so for my height, 250 pounds was obese. And I had pre-diabetes, metabolic syndrome. I had extremely high blood pressure. I was diagnosed with fatty liver disease. I had stage 2 hypertension. I also suffered from anxiety and panic attacks. And up to that point, I had kept going to the doctor, for blood pressure medication, for just, meds after meds, there's a pill for every ill, right? And it wasn't until I was diagnosed with cancer that I had that epiphany, or that cosmic wake-up call, where I knew I had to take a decisive action, because up to that point, I was just outsourcing my health to somebody else. It's kind of like we take our car to the mechanic and saying, I need you to fix this car. I was doing the same thing. I need you to fix me, make me better. It's your problem. It's not mine. And it wasn't until the cancer diagnosis, which happened 2 weeks before my 37th birthday, so that the timing on that was impeccable. And so that's a whole other story of how I was diagnosed. I went in Friday afternoon, the last appointment for the day, because I had noticed probably for about almost a year, like a typical, hey, there's a dog.
I know. Bear. He's lurking.
You'll probably see my dog bark. My dog is a part of my he's another character on my podcast. He barks at the most inopportune times.
Really? I know that Bear likes to jump up, and he likes to put himself on camera. Not only does he like people to hear him, he likes to be seen.
He's a diva, huh?
Oh, he's a diva for sure. He's definitely a diva.
I love it. So
real quick, I wanted to ask you a question. So you said you were sick for a good part of your life. Were you sick even as a child too, or was this more in your adolescent adulthood?
Yeah, it was more early adulthood. Okay. When And it's funny because the minute I moved out of my house and I was not eating slow food, like, prepared food, cooked food, and I was eating predominantly fast food and junk, that's when that disease starts to set in, like, rapidly, quickly, because it's, chronic inflammation, it's acidosis, it's the accumulation of mucus that all leads to, manifests differently in everyone, but in my case, it led to all of these conditions and ultimately cancer.
So what do you think it was that, before we move on to your diagnosis, what do you think it was so interesting that you said that the body and the universe and life itself just gives you signs? I totally believe that. I believe that things that feel out of order, or when something in your body physically is out of order, it's some sort of sign. But what's interesting is that you seem to have had a lot of signs before the cancer.
Yeah, and I ignored them.
But for some reason, do you think it was the cancer being kind of the big C word that society kind of freaks out about? It's like you see people dying of it everywhere. That just kind of shook you. Was it that?
Yeah, that was the bomb. Cancer was like a nuclear bomb that went off in my life. And when I was diagnosed, I had not known anyone personally or any members of my family who had ever had cancer. And so I was majorly freaking out. And it was very surreal. And it was kind of like, why me? This isn't happening to me. Cancer doesn't happen to me. It happens to other people. But yet here I was. And that really was that wake-up call, or the beginning of the wake-up call, which allowed me to then take ownership of my health, because up to then I was just outsourcing it. And then ultimately that decision to take the ownership of my health spiraled into other things, and it snowballed into, other things, which I'm sure we'll get to, but it all begins with one decision. And literally, it sounds cliche, but your life can change drastically as a result of one decision, one decisive action that you take, and you'll see the ripple effects from that, kind of go out into the universe. And that's exactly what happened with me.
So when you first got the diagnosis, it was just testicular cancer, correct?
It was
testicular cancer. So when you first got the diagnosis, what was the recommended protocol from the doctor?
So I went in on a Friday. It was the last appointment of the day. Immediately the doctor examined me, and I went to a urologist, and immediately he was like, yep, that's not good. I had noticed my headphones are falling off. Look at that. I'm wearing a hat, by the way, because I'm going through an awkward hair phase and I'm growing it out. I'm doing something a little different because I've always had short hair, but I'm like, hey, what the heck? I want to grow it out while I still have it.
So you're in the weird intermediate where it's like kind of doesn't look that hot.
Yeah, it's like no amount of mousse gel or pomade can fix it. So it's like I'm in the hat phase right now.
I see.
So I'm sorry, I have ADD. No, I don't. I'm just kidding. I went in immediately, got diagnosed. Prior to that, I had noticed an unusual firmness down there in the nether regions. And like any typical man, I delayed it going to the doctor for almost a year. So
was it a lump, or was it like did you have a lump, or was it like itself was firm, like your balls were firm?
my right ball, righty, was unusually firm. Yeah.
Okay, so the whole thing. I see.
The whole thing was just like solid as a rock, which that's not good in those parts.
Yeah.
Not good at all.
I wouldn't imagine it would be.
No. So I didn't go for the longest time because I kept thinking to myself and rationalizing it. And I was obsessing. I was just like examining myself constantly and like, okay, well, maybe I pulled something, or maybe I need antibiotics, or I don't know, But no, it never went away, and it just got worse and worse to the point where I couldn't even put on like jeans without it hurting.
Oh, wow.
And so it was that painful. So I finally made the appointments because, I've got 3 kids and married, and, I finally figured, well, I can only delay this so long. I need to take care of it. So I went in, I was the last appointment on a Friday, so it was like almost 5 o'clock, and the doctor immediately was like, "Yep, doesn't look good." So he sent me across the hall for an ultrasound, and they got the results of that ultrasound immediately. And do you hear that?
I do.
That is my dryer.
Okay, no worries. Can barely hear it.
Okay. I got the results of that ultrasound immediately, and he says, as at the time I was traveling for work, I'm traveling a lot, like almost every week, and he said, just cancel your plans. We need to rush you into surgery tomorrow. We're looking at a potential cancer diagnosis, and this is serious. And so you can imagine what was going through my head, like, what the hell, am I going to die? Immediately that's what you're thinking, right?
Well, not to mention, they're saying you have to go into emergency surgery tomorrow.
Yes, immediately.
And you can't even think about it.
Well, yeah, and you're exactly right. And come to find out, that is a very common reaction, or a very common message that's conveyed, which is immediate surgery, no time to think about it. Let's rush in. This is serious. Cancel all your plans, and hey, we need to get to chopping. But as it turns out, that's not really the case. You have time to try things. I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it. Today is full of surprises. So we can just bring them on. Bring them on. What else is gonna?
I'm sure the doorbell's gonna ring, and my
dogs are gonna bark, and then just
all right.
Whatever. So
we'll go with it.
So I didn't know this. So with cancer diagnosis, I could imagine though, because you've probably watched The Truth About Cancer. I loved that documentary. It's a business. It's an industry. So I can only imagine how maybe not every oncologist, but a lot capitalize on fear with the big C word. Like, you got to go in, you got to get this taken care of now. And most people don't know any better. So of course they're going to do it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, fear is the main motivator, and it is a business. And I don't like to focus on that so much and you'll notice, like, on my Instagram account, I rarely post about, like the cancer conspiracy. They want your money. They want you. You're more valuable sick and not healthy. But yeah, and I tend to focus more on just educating and prevention. And then, even more importantly than that, the way that I kind of wrap my head on cancer, because I did go through like all the stages of grief over the course of a weekend. From that Friday to Monday, I was in bad shape. But eventually I got to a place where I decided that I was going to remain like positive to a fault, and I was going to not go down that road of fear. And that ultimately led to some really, really cool revelations, and some of the messages that I share about cancer, which is kind of a unique take on it. But I never used the words battle cancer or fight cancer, or a lot of people, say #fuck cancer. I never used that kind of language. And that's because those are negative words, and they have a negative connotation. And when you speak something or think something, and then you verbalize it, you put that out into the universe, your words are like a check that the universe is going to cash. And so when we speak negatively, we are exercising the wrong muscles, because we're resisting, and what you resist persists, right? So if you think about it in terms of weight training, if I'm, doing bicep curls, I'm resisting, I'm exercising that muscle. And when we're using negative language or thinking negatively, we are also exercising that part of our brain, and that is going to produce more negativity, in which that is not an optimum state for healing cancer. So I deliberately chose to not use that language, and I still don't to this day. When somebody asks me, how did you beat cancer? How did you treat cancer? Or how did you fight cancer? I said, I didn't. I treated cancer. I'll even say I overcame cancer. But I've learned that the best way to treat it is to embrace it and not to resist it, to let it become a part of your story. And it's not the whole book, it's just a chapter. You kind of become one with it. And when you do, you take away its power.
Well, I think
So
what people miss with a lot of disease, and my husband has Lyme disease, so he's going through the healing of that, is that the disease, when you're healing it, is part of you. It is you inside.
Yes.
So for him, he's got with Lyme disease, it's certain bacteria. He has Bartonella, which is a co-infection. Stephen Buhner is a scientist who he promotes the natural healing of Lyme disease. And something he promotes is very aligned with what you're saying, is you almost have to be metaphorical friends with your microbes, because especially with Lyme disease, it's not a clear, I don't want to say cancer is clear, but these things develop, certain cell walls where you can't break them down. They learn, like, for example, the one my husband has, it's actually changed his DNA to stay alive. He's had it for over a decade. So
wow,
it really fucks with you. So you have to learn to live in harmony with these things first. And then when you accept that it's a part of you, then they say that's the next stage of healing. And instead of like, fuck this, I want this gone, get this out, because you're almost fighting a part of yourself in that way. You're
right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it is part of you, and you do need to make friends with it. And it's a part of your story. And more importantly than that, really, is it's a messenger. What is cancer trying to tell you? There's something wrong with not overwhelmingly wrong, but there is something wrong that you need to fix. And maybe sometimes it's not even physical. Maybe it's emotional. Maybe it's spiritual. Maybe it's, something else. But I believe that cancer is a disease of the mind, body, and spirit, and it does need to be treated on all fronts. Some people just treat the physical aspect of it and not the emotional or physical or spiritual parts. And I think that's an injustice that you're doing to yourself. You really need to take the time to address everything. And when something like this happens, that's a cosmic wake-up call or a cataclysm in your life, use this as a turning point. Use this crisis as a catalyst for change. And that's what I did. And it started with taking ownership of my health and refusing chemotherapy and radiation.
So they recommended that for you. They recommended the chemo.
Yes. So basically, I had the surgery, which is called an orchiotomy, which wasn't fun. Essentially, they cut a hole into your abdomen, and they go in and remove the testicle from the inside out, which completely is the opposite of the way I thought it was going to be done. I thought it was going to take some scissors and just snip. No, but no, they go in the long way. They took the scenic route, and so. And after that, they sent it off to pathology. They wouldn't give it to me, even no matter how hard I asked. I wanted to keep it.
Just keep it up on your mantle.
Yeah, I was gonna make a necklace out of it or something, but
oh gosh, that would be a story to tell, man. Like, oh, what's this? Oh, let me tell you.
This is my testicle, which I now carry as an ornament. Or I can put it on the Christmas tree or something. But anyway, they sent it off to pathology. And when it came back, sure enough, yes, I had almost stage 2. So, and can you imagine, even after a year of putting it off, it still had only progressed to not even stage 2. It was stage 1B, and it was a classic seminoma, which, and this is a big point of contention with me when people say, like, well, this is the good cancer, this is the cancer that you want. I'm like, no, well, you don't want any kind of cancer, right? But that's what they told me, like, this is the good one, this is the one you want. Lance Armstrong had this type of cancer, and it metastasized all the way to his brain, and he was still able to recover. Of course, he did chemo. And that's kind of the other thing that is different about this, because chemo, for the most part, doesn't work. It you're more likely to actually die from chemo than cancer, unfortunately. But for some cancers, very small percentage of cancers, chemo actually is effective. And the type of cancer that I had, chemo was effective for. I still didn't do it, even though I was strongly encouraged to do it by my family, by my friends, by the doctor, by everyone. I didn't do it because I had to draw that line in the sand. Because up to then, I had the high blood pressure, I had stage 2 hypertension, I had fatty liver disease, I had anxiety, and it was a laundry list of things that were wrong with me. And I finally realized that if I allowed the doctor to heal me, not pharmaceuticals really don't heal anyway, they mask. But if I allowed the doctor to treat this condition, I would never get better on my own. It was going to be the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I finally realized that. The point when I realized that is when the doctor told me if I was going to go through chemo, my wife and I were sitting there, and he was kind of describing some of the symptoms or some of the things that could go wrong. And he was saying things like, obviously the hair loss, you're not going to have an appetite. So he was talking to my wife, and he was saying, if you see that, he's losing weight and he doesn't want to eat, and just feed him whatever sounds good. And so I made a joke. Ashley, I said, well, how about McDonald's? And he's like, yes, eat McDonald's.
Yeah, that makes no sense.
Yeah, right. So he was encouraging me to consume McDonald's if that sounded good, and if I needed some type of nourishment, which it's not nourishing at all. So that was one of the red flags that went off. I'm like, okay, why is he telling me to eat McDonald's? I mean, we all know that it's not good for you, right? When you eat McDonald's, it's obviously not good for you. And I think we all know this. And he knew that. So why was he telling me to eat McDonald's, even though it was a joke? So that was one of the turning points. And then we went to tour the chemo area, and it looked like a very sad place. I mean, it was dark, dimly lit. The blinds were closed. Everybody's kind of sitting there, with the IVs in their arms, and they kept describing some of the side effects of chemo, and they were saying things like, telling my wife, like, if he so much as gets a sniffle, you better take him to the emergency room, because that can turn into pneumonia and he could die from that. And this is very serious. You can't be around your kids, with the chemo and radiation. You can't, have sex because you'll be radioactive.
You can't live your life, basically.
You can't live your life. Yeah, pretty much. And so I'm thinking like, wow, you're really selling this to me hard right now. Where do I sign up?
Well, I think it goes back into, I just this came up to me, or for me when you were talking. I don't want to say many of us are so focused on not dying instead of living. And the scene that you described is a great example of that. It's like, instead of taking a step back and looking at, is chemotherapy right for me in this situation or not? Like you said, maybe for some people it would be, maybe for some people it absolutely wouldn't be, because I read that statistic or the study that I think it was something crazy, like 98% of people that get chemotherapy will be dead within 5 years.
Right.
It's a peer-reviewed study that was done. And
right.
So, but instead of that, it's such a focus on not dying that many people are willing to subject themselves to all of these things that, at least to me, and I'm always hesitant when I say this because I don't have a cancer diagnosis. My mind is not right there. So I am sure I would be going through 101 different emotions if I actually had a doctor in my face telling me you have cancer and you need to go to surgery.
Right.
But with the lens of knowledge that I have right now, to me, I was having a conversation with my aunt, and I was talking to her about this, and I said, I really think I wouldn't get chemotherapy. I really think if I got cancer, I would do the holistic healing way, the green juice, everything, right? I mean, I already try to do that in my life right now.
Sure.
Because I feel like I'm healing from stuff. But she goes, you're trying to tell me, like, she couldn't believe it. She's like, you wouldn't get chemotherapy. She couldn't figure it out. And I said, the way that chemotherapy feels to me is the same as if somebody put Coke in front of me and was like, do you want to do a line? And I just don't, right? Like, I can't really explain why I don't want to do Coke, but it's because I don't want to, because something in my body's like, this is not good for me and I don't want to do it. It's that same block that I'm like, I just don't think I would do it.
So you don't want to do a rail of chemo?
No, I don't. I don't. And
I don't blame you.
So, but it's this focus on not dying, you know, instead of figuring out what to do from the inside out to live again.
That's right. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. We're so focused on not dying that we're truly not living. And, you know, what's better? And I think your aunt's reaction is very common. And that's an example of a cognitive dissonance that the majority of people have when they're presented with something that goes against their programming or their core beliefs or what they believe to be true, what they've been told. Then that's a very common reaction, whether you're talking about chemo, whether you're talking about politics, religion, vaccines. I mean, all the hot button issues that are these sacred cows. If you present anything that is the opposite of those beliefs, then you're going to get a reaction like that. And let me tell you, I have lost friends. My circle has gotten smaller, even, you know, with some of my family members, to be quite honest with you. I'm not the black sheep, but I'm more of the green sheep of the family.
The green sheep. I like that.
That's right.
I like that.
But ultimately, you have to do what you have to do, whatever feels right for you. There's no one way. You know, we're all snowflakes biologically. And that kind of idea I've translated to every aspect of my life. And after my diagnosis and my subsequent treatment, which was the opposite of conventional medicine, I did what I call the kitchen sink approach, which is anything and everything humanly possible to ensure that I was cancer-free, because I had what they call vascular invasion. So cancer travels via two channels. It travels via blood channels or it travels via the lymph nodes. And I had rogue cancer cells that had gotten loose throughout my bloodstream, probably as a result of the surgery, to be honest with you. Because that's what you're doing. When you get a biopsy or a surgery, you're cutting into that, you know, cancer, and then boom, it's released. Mm-hmm. And so to kind of mitigate my chances for a recurrence of cancer, which was very likely, that's why they had recommended the chemo and radiation. And I didn't do that. I instead I started out by purging my pantry. I got rid of all the processed foods. I radically changed my diet. I started juicing like a mother, and I was drinking like upwards of a gallon of green juice a day. And
wow, that's a lot. I was going to say, how many times you go to the bathroom?
A lot. And I said, look, cheers.
Yes. Cheers.
Clink, clink. Okay.
This is actually something weird my body's been craving lately is warm water. Nothing in it. I put this in the tea kettle. Sometimes I'll have, you know, a little lemon or something, but it's so soothing because I know it helps wake the stomach up in the morning.
It does. And there is something to be said for warm water. Years ago, I used to work with a lady who was from Japan. And every day at lunch, she would, after she ate, she would drink a glass of hot water. And if you think about it, like what happens to like grease in your sink, it solidifies, right? And how do we get rid of that? That grease with hot water. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So it kind of makes sense, right? So I was doing an insane amount of juicing. I started meditating. I started a meditation practice 5 years ago, and that I do daily. It's a non-negotiable for me. I have to do it every day or I just don't feel right. I'm addicted to it.
So rewind real quick. So for the juice, did you have a specific protocol that you were following for the juicing? A tailored fruits and vegetables for maybe alkalinity or?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. So what did you do?
So for juicing, as it turns out, there are multiple cures for cancer, and juicing is one of them. Some people do straight greens. I've even known people and seen people who done nothing but carrot juice and heal that way. But I did, essentially it's very simple ingredients. It's a base of celery, which now is in vogue. Yep, all celery juice. I posted the other day and I tagged him in and I said I was drinking celery juice before it was cool.
You're the OG.
I'm the OG. Yep, that's right. No, I'm sure there's tons of people doing it. Jack LaLanne, hey, in the 60s and 70s, he was juicing.
Yeah.
But
I'm taking notes, by the way. So I'm in school right now. I'm listening to you taking notes about this juicing stuff. Oh, okay. I lost you for a sec. Are you still there?
And Fuji apple.
Okay, I missed that because you blanked out. I heard Fuji apple and that's all. And I don't imagine that you were just juicing Fuji apples.
No. I threw in one Fuji apple, but it was like I usually like my juices to be 80-20, 80% veggie, 20% juice or 20% fruit. And I have no problem drinking straight veggie juice as long as there's a lemon in it. That lemon seems to make all the difference.
So what were the ingredients of what you were doing? I missed it.
So it was celery, cucumber, spinach, kale, lemon, a knuckle of ginger, and one Fuji apple.
And this was, so you did this all in one juice. It wasn't separate juices throughout the day. So you just basically made this mass amount of juice and you would just drink that throughout the day.
A shit ton of juice. And at the time I had a Breville juice fountain, which is a centrifugal juicer. So it has a spinning blade. And so pretty much with that type of a juicer, you have to drink it immediately because it'll start oxidizing after like an hour or so. But then eventually I made my way to an Omega slow press juicer, which is a masticating juicer. So it has an auger instead of a centrifugal spinning blade. And that slows down the oxidation process to where those juices last for up to 72 hours. So I was able to kind of meal prep and juice for the week, or for a couple of days. I would probably juice twice a week and just make big batches of it that I would just drink all day long. And I still do that every day. I have green juice every day. And
do you still drink a gallon of it, or are you drinking a little bit less now?
I drink probably that size of a mason jar that you have. That's what I drink per day, at least one of those, if not two.
So that's like your maintenance dose. So you have like your healing dose that you just kind of overhauled your body. You wanted to get it to more of a healing state, and then this would be more of your like maintenance.
Exactly. But so, I mean, I'll never stop juicing. It's a part of my life, just like meditation. I'll never stop.
So how long did you do the gallon a day?
Oh, wow. I did that for about 9 months, gallon a day.
And did you feel like your body told you when it was time to kind of slowly lower the portions of it? Is that what made you not keep drinking the gallon?
Yeah, I think my body did tell me, I think, that it was okay to cut back, but when I if there was a day where it was just super hectic and I had an early morning, or I had take my car to the dealership and I was there for 3 hours, I was definitely going through even sort of like a withdrawal from it where I needed it. And if you are going to be addicted to something, green juice is a good thing to be addicted to. Hell yeah. But yeah, I'll drink it every day, every single day in some shape or form. If I'm traveling and I can't, make raw juice, which is my favorite, my most preferred type of juice, then I'll find a juice bar, or I'll go to Whole Foods and get a cold pressed juice as a last resort. Good, better, best is kind of my mentality.
Oh yeah, whenever we go on vacation, my husband and I, the first thing we look at is where's the closest Whole Foods, and we will literally plan our vacations that way because it's so important for us. Like, I used to be the type of person that I just derail on vacation and I would eat whatever I wanted and stuff, but I pay for that now because I feel like I've healed my body so much. When I go on, if I have, sometimes if I have processed food now, but it's good food. So let's just say like I eat a lot of like siete chips. Like, are you familiar with siete?
I am. Yeah.
So I'll eat like siete chips. Even if I have good ingredients, but something processed, I feel it in my body.
Sure.
You know? So when you were doing the overhaul with the juicing, were you eating as well, or were you just juicing?
No. I was still eating. I was eating a lot of salad, and I was snacking on a lot of like nuts and seeds. And I was also drinking kombucha at the time. I still do. I still drink kombucha, but that was part of my regimen, as well as the cannabis oil. So that was kind of my routine. And that's part of that kitchen sink. I did everything but the kitchen sink. So overhauling every aspect of my life, physically, emotionally, spiritually. So let me describe a typical day when I was going through my treatment.
Sure.
So I would wake up, and the first thing that I did, even before I got out of bed, was think of something that I was truly grateful for. And before my feet touched the ground, I would think of something I was truly grateful for, and I would just kind of bask in those feelings, and I would just kind of soak in them and bathe in them. And then that's how I started my day. So then I got up, and then I did meditation, and then I would drink at least a glass of alkaline water, squeeze a lemon in it. And then I would move on to some kombucha. I would make my green juice, because before I got the masticating juicer and I was juicing daily, juicing still was a form of meditation for me, because it's a ritual, something that you do every day. That's almost like a sacred practice. And that's what juicing is for me still to this day. I would make juice. Somewhere in there, I would slip in my cannabis oil. And then by the time I actually made the juice and drank the juice, within 20 minutes of drinking that juice, I mean, you can feel it, the effects of it immediately, because it goes into your bloodstream immediately by bypassing the digestive system. But with the result of the meditation, the cannabis oil, the kombucha, the juicing, the gratitude, at that point, if it was a sunny day, I would go for a jog. And let me tell you, Ashley, those are some of the best days of my life, because I felt like I could fucking levitate. I mean, I felt so good. I mean, and then, like, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it now, but I felt like I could fly. I mean, it was like a magical feeling, and it's not because I was tripping balls. I wasn't high or anything. And yeah, you get a little high from the cannabis oil, but it was more of like just high on life type of vibe, So that was my morning routine, and then I was still snacking in between there on nuts and seeds, and I was eating a lot of salads and beans, and then that was just like my daily routine. That's kind of what I did for about 9 months, and it worked, because I went back. I did go back for a few blood tests back to the oncologist's office, and I walked out one day and I never went back. And so I walked into the oncologist's office to get a routine blood test, and they were all coming out fine, cancer-free. I walked in one morning, and the entire office, the administrative people, the nurses, the doctors, they were all eating Krispy Kreme donuts and kolaches and breakfast tacos and drinking their acidic coffee and energy drinks, Monster, you know how it is in every office in America. So that was like, I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? These people, that's what they're eating. I have no business.
And look what they're promoting. It's like, you have to live your life aligned with the message that you're promoting. Right. You have to, or else you're hypocritical. I mean, to me, it's ridiculous. And that's, even some people, like, you see out there, just they're promoting all these messages, or these brands that promote messages, but then the people that own them or work for them don't live the lifestyle that they're promoting. It conflicts so much, and it's so confusing for people, because somebody walking into an oncology department, seeing oncologists eat donuts, like that's subconscious messaging right there. I mean, it
it's
it
like
plays a role.
like going to a barber with the shitty haircut.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense. Does not compute. So I walked out and I never went back. And that was my exit from conventional medicine. And that was 4 years ago. Never went back. Never. And
hearing you talk about the juicing and feeling like you can levitate, I've had some experiences on like the end of a 3-day juice fast where I've only juiced for 3 days. I remember one walk vividly where I was walking outside, it was night, and I usually have a lot of anxiety at night, period, let alone leaving my house at night. That's another layer of anxiety.
Right.
And I remember I was walking my dog at night, and I just related to what you said, because I felt like I was a superhero. I felt like I was just walking. My body felt like it had never felt before. My mind was so clear. I could look around and see everything that I was grateful for everything. I was grateful to be alive. And like you said, I felt like I could fucking levitate too. Like I could just like take off into the sky at that time.
And who knows, maybe we can.
Right? I know.
Who knows? I mean, anything's possible,
manifesting that.
Sure.
So all right, so you had this morning routine. Were you also working full time during this healing period?
Yes, I did take some time off because one of the things that I did was while I was still contemplating which route I was going to go, I actually did make an appointment to start chemotherapy, and I missed it. And I was traveling for work at the time. And so I was in airports and, scheduling. Sometimes my schedule was crazy where I had to just up and leave, quickly. But I made an appointment for chemo. I missed it. And I started getting harassing phone calls, like saying, you're irresponsible. You need to do this. Come do this for your family. You owe it to them. Things like that, which was like, yeah, I'm serious.
That is beyond. So they tap in. I didn't even know that they're tapping into like emotions. That's beyond physical, like scientific, or not even just scientific, but objective is what I'm trying to say.
It's just wrong. Yeah, it's fucked up. And so even before that, when I was still like taking the tour of the chemo, I forgot to tell you, they sent us to talk to like the billing person, and the billing person was saying, okay, you're scheduled to have chemo on this day. Here's what I suggest. Your insurance is going to reset like on, next month. I suggest you come in like every week and get as many rounds of chemo as you possibly can before your deductible resets. And I'm thinking like, well, wait a minute. How do you know how much chemo I should have? You're not the doctor, right? You're the billing person. Mm-hmm. So she was over here just telling me, trying to get me to schedule as many possible chemo sessions as I could fit in, just for billing purposes. And that to me was another huge red flag.
There's so many red flags. When I watched The Truth About Cancer, actually the episodes are so long, I was only able to get through, I think, part of episode 2 or 3. There's 9 of them, so I haven't gotten through. But I heard some stories of parents like being forced to bring in their children for chemotherapy outside of what they want. I mean, that's terrifying.
Yeah, no,
I don't even know what I would do.
It's bad. Yeah, it's bad. And we're now getting to that point still with the subject of vaccines. They're talking, California has mandatory vaccines. They're talking about, introducing that legislation nationwide, and what's that going to look like? And, that's a whole other subject, but
I know I don't know enough about vaccines scientifically. I can't speak on it. What I can speak on are a couple things. As a logical person, when you're getting something free from the government, and I'm talking about a flu shot, to me, that's just ridiculous. If people just take a step back to think about the concept that you're getting something free from the government in the climate that it's in right now, something doesn't add up to me there. So that's one. 2, I have seen a horrible vaccine reaction in my pup. He was, I want to say 2 months old. The vet gave him 3 vaccines in one day. Like the 3, it was, I think he got his parvo, he got his leptospirosis, and bordetella all in one day in one shot. And I hadn't done research at that time. I wish I would have known. We took him home. The poor thing blew up like the Michelin Man. We had to rush him back. He was in anaphylactic shock. They had to give him systemic corticosteroids, and then they had to give him other systemic through his veins.
Yep.
And they were able to calm him down in that scenario. But then a couple of weeks later, I started noticing something wrong with his eye. And we took him to the vet. He was like, there's something weird going on. He recommended us to an ophthalmologist, took him to the ophthalmologist. The ophthalmologist said, you know, he has a cataract. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. She goes, this is probably genetic. So I called the breeder, and she's like, 30 years of this bloodline, we've never had a cataract. It's not genetic. Wow. So go back to the ophthalmologist. You'll love this story. And she's like, okay, well, we need to get him in for surgery. He's probably so she goes, this is going to progress. This is going to get worse. We need to bring him in for surgery. It's going to be $4,000 to $5,000. If he gets to surgery, he'll likely still lose his eye later in life, because there's an 80% chance he's going to have glaucoma or retinal detachment if he plays too hard. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, I have a 2-month-old dog. He's going to play hard. Okay. I don't want to sit here and think that he could lose his eye if he plays too hard. So she said, give him these steroids in his eye. So I got the medicine, I brought it home, I gave it to him for a couple days, and then I was looking at the back, and it says side effect cataract on the back of the fucking medicine. Ouch. So I'm sitting here like, there's something wrong with this whole scenario. So spent a lot of days crying. I mean, a lot of days stressed the fuck out. But I started doing research, and I saw that vitamin E, selenium helps eye health in dogs. I started giving him these treats, highly concentrated with those. Fish oil helped. Certain enzymes, digestive enzymes helped. We changed his diet. I developed this 5-drop remedy. We started with MSM powder and I believe flaxseed oil, first drop. 15 minutes later, first I did the flax oil. 15 minutes later, I did the MSM powder in saline solution. Then I did something called Can-C, which is popular in Europe, but not a lot of people use it here. It's supposed to reverse cataracts in humans. Wow. That was the 3rd drop. 4th drop was a homeopathic remedy called Cineraria maritima, I think it was. And then the 5th drop was something called Ocluvet, which is supposed to help eye health. So I did these 5 drops, about 5 to 15 minutes in between them, 3 times a day for 2 months. Wow. I was supposed to be giving his medication. Mm-hmm. So we go back to the ophthalmologist, and she looks at his eye, and she's looking at it, and she's like looking at me and looking at it and looking at me. And then she goes, I've never seen this before. And I said, what? And she goes, the cataract is better than it was when you came 2 months ago. Mm-hmm. She goes, in my over 10 years of practice, I've never seen this happen. And then I go, let me tell you what I did.
Let me take you to school.
Yeah, exactly. And she was so intrigued. She had me send her everything I did. I mean, thankfully she wasn't aggressive, like, you know, who do you think you are? Because I was expecting that reaction. But I sent her the protocol, and that's a story I love to tell, because, you know, the vet still, our old vet, we don't go to him anymore. We go to a naturopathic vet now. But the old vet still says it's genetic. He refuses to say that the vaccines have anything to do with it. Yeah. And he'll still say, oh, it's just genetic. That's it. And my point is I don't know a lot of science about vaccines, but I know enough to question them.
Sure. And that's what we should do. We should question everything. And if you talk about the scientific method, we advance scientific research by asking questions. And we should never get to the point where we say the science is finished or the science is done, because that means you can never advance beyond that point. And is that good for anybody, really? But anyway, that is another rabbit hole that it's a hot button issue. And I used to debate people and engage in that online. And I just don't anymore because I've adopted a Zen philosophy about a lot of things.
You can't be in Instagram comments if you want to be Zen. I used to do that shit too. Like I would insert myself when I would just see something. Like I'm just like, really, like, come on, people. Like you have, but it's not worth it because one, you can't even see tone online. You can't even, it's not a real interaction.
Not at all.
And it's just not worth it.
No, it's not. And to be honest with you, that I don't have time for it. And you're not really going to change anyone's mind by going back and forth. So I'd rather just keep on posting what I'm posting and kind of lead by example. So
yeah, it's I don't think it's wise. And this is something that I'm restructuring in my own life. It's not wise to just with anything say I know and put a period.
Sure.
It's just not wise. And I feel like for so long I don't know how I've adopted that, but for many years, prior to a few years ago, and even sometimes now, I get very wrapped up in what I've learned emotionally, especially with this kind of stuff, health. And I'm quick to react sometimes if I'm not grounded. This is where meditation comes in. If I'm in a reactive state, if someone wants to say something that's just so ridiculous, I feel like I have that I know approach, and I come to it with like, you don't know, I know. But that no one knows everything.
Well, that's also, it's a construct of the ego too. And that's why I practice mindfulness in addition to meditation, because you can then catch those thoughts before you verbalize them. And that allows you to, not jump in or not act on that thought of, I know. And a good example of this is, like when I'm traveling, like in an airplane, and if I happen to have a seat that's in like the bulkhead or that's in first class occasionally, and I see somebody go behind me and get in row 30, your first natural inclination is to think, wow, sucks to be that guy, right? Look how good I have it up here. But then in reality, it doesn't matter. And I'm no better than anyone. I've sat in row 30 before all the time. And so again, that mindfulness is like a net that catches those thoughts. And I don't think you can, it's human nature to have those thoughts, and it's human nature to have an ego. We all have an ego. And I think it's the price that we pay for physical existence. You have to have an ego. That's your ego is actually teaching you, and it's helping you to evolve on your journey towards enlightenment.
I was listening to a spiritual leader talking about how she said everybody's just so much like, fuck the ego, get rid of the ego, kill the ego. But it's like, actually, the ego could be one of our greatest teachers if we only learn to observe it.
Absolutely. And I used to be of that same mind where I was like, no, we got to kill the ego. We got to destroy the ego. But in reality, you can't. And you can manage it, sure. But it's there to balance you out.
I want to talk to you about something this is very interesting that you have a CBD company, because I actually work for a CBD manufacturer. So I was like, this is really awesome.
Very cool.
So we can definitely talk about that. But with the CBD, and this is with CBD, cannabis in general, and anything that sort of puts me in a state where I feel relaxed. And since you dealt with anxiety and panic, I definitely wanted to pick your brain about this. So where I'm at in my life is like, I feel like I've done a lot of healing, but something I still deal with, I don't have a lot of physical problems as much as I have the mental instability. So I still have a lot of anxiety. I kind of have irrational fears. I have a phobia with fainting because I had an experience. Panic attacks that still kind of come up. I'm very sensitive. I don't know if you experience this. I'm very sensitive to like anything I put in my body. So I can't even have caffeine. I'm just like, it's too much for me. But I'm so interested in consuming more cannabis, more CBD oil. But for some reason, when I do, I get to this state that feels very relaxed. Your mind kind of goes into a different territory.
Right.
And for some reason, I get very paranoid still. I could take one hit from a joint and I get very paranoid. And I don't know if you've dealt with this
That's happened to me before. Yeah, it has. And I will tell you, there is a difference between, like the strains, indica or sativa. They are going to affect you differently. But yeah, sometimes, and I think what ends up happening ultimately is that it amplifies whatever mood or whatever you're feeling. I think it can.
So it's like what's under, this is what I always say, what's underneath the surface, what you're suppressing with whatever you're doing, your work or whatever, it's going to bring that up and it's going to allow you to see it.
I think so. I think that's right. Now, I will tell you that CBD has helped me tremendously with anxiety and just to get to that chill place, that happy place. I call it my happy juice.
Your happy juice?
Happy juice. That's what I call it. But
I think I'm so, even with CBD, sometimes, like, I know it's non-psychoactive, but you still feel what I call as the CBD high, because I feel like it's the absence of stress. So it's not necessarily a high, but you get to that place where your mind is clear, you feel empty. And I think, as weird as it sounds, that state is anxiety inducing for me, because then I can no longer perform and do and produce. So then when I get to that state, the state in itself produces anxiety. I'm kind of fucked up in that regard.
I think that's a clinical term, right? Now, we're all fucked up, Ashley, in our own ways. But in reality, there is no such thing as not fucked up. Like, there is no perfect. You are perfect. I'm perfect. We're all perfect. Your husband's perfect. Your dog is perfect. Because that standard of not fucked upness, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't exist. So
it's hard when you feel isolated, though. Like it's hard for me. I don't know why I do this, but I think it's because I strive to relax so much. Like, I want to relax, but then I question myself, do I really want to relax? But I tell myself that I want to relax, but there are so many nights where I'm like, oh, I could smoke a J right now, or I could, take some CBD oil. I could do all these things, but I choose not to, because I fear the paranoia that will come from relaxing. So instead of choosing to do it and kind of sit through it, I just put it off. And I think I get more and more and more and more and more stressed.
From what it sounds like you're in your head a lot. And, I would recommend upping your meditation.
I don't really have a constant meditation practice right now at all. So that's another thing, is that I used to, and it helps, but I've kind of fallen off, because it also gets me to this. It's a theme. I kind of run from that relaxed state for some reason, and maybe it's something I need to dive into. But I was curious to see if you had gone through any of that, coming from anxiety and panic into kind of being into more of a relaxed, meditative, Zen state of life.
I am definitely 100 times more Zen than I used to be 5 years ago, but I attribute that towards diets, and actually the gut and microbiome plays a huge part in your mental state, because the majority of the serotonin production doesn't take place up here, but it takes place in the digestive tract. And that's why a diet of real food is important. Probiotics, naturally occurring probiotics, are important to maintain that optimum level of serotonin production. And it's so easy. I see people all the time, and I get questions all the time, about anxiety, about depression. There are so many things you can do that aren't SSRIs, that aren't, antidepressants. So many things that you can do. And again, it's within the spirit of being your own healthcare provider and taking ownership. Diet is probably the number one thing that you can do, and supporting that healthy microbiome and that healthy gut. But
I think I may adopt your juicing. I want to it's almost like treat myself like, I don't want to say treat myself like I have a serious disease, but it's taking control of your life, to drink a gallon of green juice a day, for example, just to give your body that nourishment, that reset, I feel like would be beneficial for anybody at any state right now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you actually just said the cure. You just said the cure.
What did I say?
Treat your body like you've got the disease. So that's actually when people ask me like, well, what's the cure for cancer? How did you know you were cured? I said, I don't. I just never stopped doing it. I'm still doing it. So you keep eating like you're still treating.
Keep eating like you're still treating.
That's a catchphrase right there. Yeah, that's what I do. And so if you continue to do that, you're going to continue to be in that healing state. That is actually the cure. It's not the food that heals you, but it's your body firing on all cylinders like it was intended to.
That intention.
Yes, absolutely. Your health and happiness, abundance, these are your natural states. Everything else that you experience outside of those, they are unnatural to us. Health, happiness, and abundance, there are natural states and there are divine right. We have every right to claim these as our own. And essentially disease is a divorce from nature. That's a result of a divorce from nature. The further we get away from that symbiotic relationship we have with nature, whether it's eating a plant-based diet or whether it's not feeding your endocannabinoid system and having that deficiency, the further we get away from nature, the quicker we're going to succumb to disease. So we have to get back to nature, keep it simple, eating a diet of simple food, real food, and managing stress, and avoiding or mitigating our risk to toxicity, because that plays a huge part in it too.
Well, and if people want to go that natural healing route like you're talking about, I think it's very important to preface it with how long it takes. And there's no finish line. So it's not that, in 1 year from now, you're going to be cured like you're saying. And on top of that, celebrating progress. And you just helped me realize that in this conversation, because I was having panic attacks daily, probably about 2 to 3 years ago. I mean, daily, multiple times throughout the day. I could not come up for air. Now, after my healing, like I've given up dairy, I've given up processed sugar, I've given up gluten for over a year now. I drink lots of juice, lots of water. I'm doing all that stuff. I maybe have a panic attack once a month. So it's celebrating the progress. So I still find myself shaming myself for the one bad thing that happened, right? Instead of saying, wow, I used to have these daily, and look at what I've done for my body, how much I love my body. And now I don't have them daily. Like, that's a win. And looking at the positive as a win.
Absolutely. Now, so let me ask you, do you do any breathing exercises?
I don't, and I think I chronically hyperventilate. I know that like when I'm feeling intense or not in an optimal state of mind, I notice my breathing is shallow or I'm holding my breath.
Right. So there's a breathing exercise that I love to do, and it helps whenever I'm feeling anxious or panicked, or even if I'm having trouble falling asleep. This works too. It's very simple. You breathe in for 4 counts. It's called 4-6-8. So I
was going to say 4-7-8 is one thing I've tried.
It works because, and it helped me learn that I was actually breathing incorrectly. When you breathe in, I think our natural inclination is to suck in, right? You suck in our stomach, right? But in order to really truly breathe deeply into the diaphragm, we should be extending or pushing out our bellies to breathe deep in. So you breathe deep into the diaphragm, extending your belly for 4 counts, and hold it in for 6 or 7, and then exhale through the mouth for 8.
Because isn't that getting the serotonin moving up?
It does get the serotonin moving, but it also resets your nervous system. It gets you out of that fight or flight, and it gets you into a more relaxed state. So if you do that 2 or 3 times.
4-7-8, that is, it's when you ask me about breathing, I haven't done it consistently, but it's something I've tried in moments of panic. It probably would be more benefit if I did it when I saw the panic coming on, but actually in a recent panic attack I had, I did that, and it took a while. It took probably 15 rounds, 20 rounds of doing it to finally get my nervous system to calm down, my heart rate down. But it worked because I just felt like it was a reset. I got my body back on that track.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the other thing I'd recommend, in addition to the daily meditation and those breathing exercises, is just walk around barefoot in the grass. Get outside. Earthing. That's exactly right. There is a science behind it. And we need that balance of that electrical energy that we receive from the earth. We're supposed to connect to the earth. So do all those things, and let's see how you feel.
For sure. No, I appreciate that. I actually tried earthing once in my backyard, and we have a lot of weeds, and I got like really itchy ankles. And I was like, I think I need to change the location here. The intention was good, but the result didn't come out the way that kind of reflected the intention. But yeah, there's so much here that I want to just broadcast to the world and say, like, here, see this information. And it's so interesting how many people just, turn a cheek to information. I mean, this is real stuff. You are a living, breathing person that—
I like to think so.
that has healed themselves of cancer. And I feel like your story, when told to a certain person, like, people don't think you exist. They think it's just some hooey that is made up.
Oh yeah. Like for a while there, like I had a couple of blogs out there that were getting some traction, and then like some articles like the one that I sent you that was circulating around for a long time. And for a while there, I was going and looking at the comments, and sure enough, you'd have some trolls in there saying, "Oh yeah, it's fake, it's bullshit." What? And even then, like, I wasn't really going after them. The funny thing was, my wife would actually go in there and respond to every single one of them.
Like, this is my husband, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what would be your motive? See, there's a motive on the other side, right? There's a motive on the profit pushing side of pharmaceuticals to lie and put out their articles and stuff, the ghostwriters. Sure. But what in the world would your motive be? Like some random guy that just feels like saying that
it's a cognitive dissonance. It's that thing of like, no, that is against my programming. I've got to say something. And that's the first reaction, is to get pissed off if you don't agree. That's human nature. Sometimes we're in this tribalistic mentality of Coke versus Pepsi, Bud Light, Miller Light, One
of my friends recently told me that there's this thing actually called the backfire effect. He came on one of my podcasts, and if you have very deep-rooted beliefs, very deep-rooted, if you were brought up with certain in a religion or whatever, when someone approaches you with an idea that's the opposite of what you believe, your brain literally fires off signals like it's actually being threatened. Like there's a physical threat in front of you, and your brain responds in that way, which is very interesting. That's why I feel like so many people are so reactive to hearing something against their ideology. It's like, whoa.
Sure. Yeah. No, I believe that exists totally.
I'm excited to be talking to you because I'm such an advocate for this stuff, and I feel so appreciative to have this conversation. Something I really wanted to touch upon is a theme in my life that I have been noticing lately. I am so fucking serious all the time.
Why so serious?
Why so serious? It's like everything is, even sometimes with my husband, like he'll say a joke or something and I take it literal, or he's, giving me a hard time and I take it literal, and it's like, Jesus, Ashley, calm the fuck down, and as somebody who's a people pleaser, and I'm always so afraid of offending people because a lot of people get offended, I find myself constantly filtering out what I want to say truly that comes out, if it's a joke, if it's being transparent with a friend, if it's telling somebody how I really feel. I find myself like filtering out all these jokes or comments or whatever to just kind of get down to a, watered down, sugar coated statement. And I just feel like that practice, I've been watching it and observing it lately in myself, and it's not good. And I feel it in my being. It's just not good to do that.
Go with that feeling. I mean, you're right. That is your soul telling you something something's not right. You need to be true to what you're really feeling. And I believe that seriousness is a disease, and it's a disease that nobody's talking about. You can see people every day walking down the street with sticks up their asses, and you can see it because they're walking funny, and everybody takes themselves way too serious.
Why do you think that is? Like, why do you think we have this just overabundance of people that don't know how to joke?
Don't know how to joke or don't know how to take a joke, and they get offended. We're in a very kind of a toxic culture when it comes to political correctness, and you can get on Facebook and post something funny and poke fun of something, and people will just lose their shit. And it's just, I don't understand it. But I think seriousness is a disease of the ego. And in talking about managing the ego, that's also something that we have to keep in check, because life was not meant to be lived so serious, because ultimately nobody is getting out alive. So why aren't we just enjoying ourselves?
It's almost like people want to be offended, though. It's almost like people read stuff, and like you said, they read stuff. But what I've been seeing lately is that they'll take a word, not even the message of what's being portrayed, not even the whole thing, but they find a buzzword that triggers them, or it's against their ideology or thoughts, and they respond to that word. And it's like people are looking for it. So it's not even, I feel like, a byproduct of life only. It's that people seek it in a way.
I think I can draw a parallel to sort of an addiction to negativity. Because like attracts like, and there's a lot of negativity out there in the culture right now. And if seriousness is a form of negativity, which, as we talked about earlier, if you keep putting that out, that's going to keep coming back to you. So I'm of the belief that life is a game, and at the end, no matter how much money you make or how much real estate you acquire, all of that money goes back in the box, just like Monopoly, when you go in the ground and you can't take it with you. So why the hell are we living our lives with a stick up our ass? And like one of my favorite philosophers is Alan Watts. And he says, man suffers because we take serious what the gods made for fun. And that is exactly right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. And it's overcoming that concept in yourself. See, we can talk all day about it in other people. Like I can talk about how much I observe everybody else being serious, but then it's looking in yourself. And I don't want to say not caring what people think, because I don't really like that statement, because that's so hard to do. It's like, we care what people think. Like to walk around not caring at all what people think, to me, would be foolish, because there are certain people that, like, I value their opinions, you value your family and things, but it's getting rid of the hyper focus on, like, I wrote a post about this the other day, is the hesitation. The hesitation is, I think, what kills a lot of people. See, when I hesitate and I don't speak my mind, or I don't say something that I maybe want to say, in that moment of hesitation, I'm contemplating, and then I usually choose silence, when instead I maybe could have said something that was my truth, and then had an opportunity to learn how to calibrate myself more closely into the person that I want to be.
Exactly. Yes.
And we're all walking around silent right now, or most of us are walking around silent because so many people are afraid to offend, and the climate is just ridiculous out there, that we're all just kind of in these little cocoons. I feel like, just kind of, this is okay to say, and it's not promoting
it's not
growth.
Promoting authenticity or growth, and we've paved the streets with eggshells. That's what we're dealing with these days. We're all walking on eggshells, and it's not good for anybody.
No, but how do you fix it? I mean, I guess you fix it by being the example, right? By being the example and showing it.
If you take a look at my Instagram feed, you can see that I have different moods, but for the most part, I like to package information in humor. I like humor as a delivery mechanism, because that's how I like to learn. I like to laugh. And I think you can kind of Trojan horse whatever you want into the sandwich of humor, So that's kind of my take on things. And that's what we do with our podcast too, is like, we try to be like the just sometimes insanely crude and but again, it's just being authentic, and that's how I talk in real life. I do say 4-letter words, and
that's why I love
keep it real.
comedians. I love comedians. That's what I'm so drawn to watching comedians, because to me it's, most of them speak the truth, right? They speak the truth that many of us are scared to speak. And what's interesting is to see how many people laugh at these statements. That's their nonverbal way of agreeing.
Exactly. Right.
It's the nonverbal way of agreeing. And it's intriguing to watch certain comedy segments and see some things I wish I could say publicly, or have the courage to say publicly, and then somebody else will say it, and then everybody laughs. I'm like, oh, it's actually okay.
Yeah, if you're on stage, it's okay. You can get away with a lot, right?
Yeah, no, seriously, for sure. To change gears a little bit, something I really don't want to skip over, because I'm curious. You posted something a while back, because I was totally stalking your feed, about juicing cannabis.
Yeah.
Do you do that?
I don't do that, because I don't live in a state where that is allowed.
Oh, but if you did.
But if I did, I would be juicing the crap out of it.
I see.
Because there are so many benefits to juicing cannabis, and just in general, that I would definitely do it. But no, I haven't, unfortunately. I really want to one day, and I will eventually get there.
Because I've heard it's very different than the whole consuming it in the form of like smoking it or an edible or things like that. I mean, is it psychoactive at that point when you're juicing it?
It's not psychoactive, because you're not heating it. So if you take a look at heating versus not heating, when you smoke a joint and you're heating it, you're not really getting the full extent of its medicinal properties. It's not bioavailable because you're burning it off. So conversely, when you take an edible, or you take a tincture, or you vape, and you're not applying that heat to it, you're getting a higher milligram, a higher dosage of that medicine. And so with juicing cannabis, the same thing kind of applies. You're juicing the leaves of it, and then you're extracting that juice. And sometimes when it comes to juicing, and what's different from blending is that with juicing, you are extracting and unlocking the oftentimes locked away nutrients or micronutrients that are hidden in the fiber, and you're extracting that juice, and that's what you are drinking. And it's almost like an IV shot, taking an IV or hooking up an IV to your arm.
And this goes for anything.
Juicing. It goes for anything. Yeah, it goes for anything. You're getting those nutrients directly, like a shot in the arm, directly into your bloodstream immediately. But juicing cannabis cannabis is one of the most nutritionally dense, one of the most important plants on the planet, outside of, like, let's say, Moringa oleifera, because it's almost magical in that it will do whatever you need it to do. And turmeric is the same way, and CBD is functions along similar lines. But cannabis juicing it will just boost your immune system. It can help any sort of neurological conditions, and absolutely helps inflammation. So it really will it's just like a whole nother level. I think you could really become superhuman if you were to juice cannabis.
I wonder how much you would need.
Oh, you need a lot, because it's kind of like, I would kind of equate it to juicing spinach. Like, because when you juice spinach, you don't really get a lot of juice. You have to have bunches and bunches and bunches. So I think you'd need at least a pound.
I know I got two bunches of spinach the other day, and I juiced kale, oranges, and spinach. And I had the oranges obviously give you a lot. The kale is okay, right? It gives you like a decent amount. But then the spinach, I'm like, are you kidding? It's like this one,
a little bit, yeah,
like it's just like it drops out. I'm like, what's going on here?
But those drops are like liquid gold.
Yeah,
because they have like micronutrients, like highly concentrated. So yeah, keep juicing spinach.
Did you get sick in the beginning when you started juicing? Because I feel like some people, that when your gut is in a more toxic state, when you're healing, sometimes one of my cousins tried juicing for a couple days, and she was like, she stopped because she got so sick, and I'm like,
Yeah.
no, keep going, keep going, keep going. You need to get past that. But she couldn't.
Yeah. So yeah, she was probably on the toilet for a while. I'm imagining, and I did go through some of that when I first started out, but that's called a healing crisis, or what's also referred to as a Herxheimer reaction. Essentially, is the detoxification that's happening, is you're expelling and getting rid of all that shit, literally and figuratively. You're getting rid of it, and that's what needs to happen. You know.
For sure. No,
and I have a funny story about that. Several years ago, I was working in an office, and there's one of my coworkers, this lady who sat next to me. She was like drinking soda after soda, and she was always sick. And I had kombucha on my desk, and I begged her. I said, "Please take this unopened bottle, take it home, drink it, and let's see how you feel. We need to start introducing the good bacteria and get rid of some of that bad bacteria." The next day, she comes in, slams the bottle on my desk. She says, "I don't know what the hell you gave me, but I've never felt so sick in my life. Here, you can have it back." But it's the same thing. It's like, if you push through that and get through that detoxification, and you come out the other side of it, you're going to feel better, and you're not going to be as sick, and you're going to have detoxed all of that stuff out. So, I mean, people just really need to push through and give it a chance.
Well, that's a really important message that I think a lot of people need to hear, because people shy away from it because they feel worse initially and they think it's not working.
Right.
And then they stop.
It's working as intended. You're drinking it to get rid of that bacteria and get rid of that toxicity. And that's why if you are pursuing chemo, it's not recommended that you juice, because by drinking the juice, you're going to detox all of that chemo out of your system. So it's really one or the other. I have a lot of people that ask me, that's probably the number one question that I get is, what did you do for cancer holistically? What's your juicing regimen? And what's heartbreaking oftentimes is that they're asking for somebody else. Mm-hmm. And that's the rub, because like saying goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink green juice.
Oh, that's been a large realization for me. I used to try to fix everybody around me, and when I found something new in health, I'd be like, "Come along, do this, do this."
But yeah, it doesn't work. And the person who has the illness has to be open-minded and willing to try it. You cannot drink green juice for somebody else or make them drink it, and that's what I see a lot, unfortunately. And then the other thing is, everybody is on their own path, and just like cancer was my wake-up call, everyone, I think, has the opportunity to receive a wake-up call, whether it's cancer, whether it's a divorce, whether it's, bad car accidents, or, financial ruin, bankruptcy. Everybody has that point of change where they can see that divergent path, and depending on what path they choose, like the road less traveled, the road not taken, that decision can ultimately change your life if you act on it. Because as we said earlier, the universe does put these beacons out, or put these signs out for you to act on, and eventually you will, once you get the big enough sign.
Believe it or not, I have this theory, and it is totally far-fetched, and there's no science behind it, but I very much believe in signs. And as weird as it sounds, I feel like maybe not everybody, but the people that just drop dead, let's just say like drop dead of a heart attack or cardiac arrest. I have this theory that that person was given so many different signs and chose not to take them, that the universe is like, you got to try again, done, and then you get to start over. Like it's the way of like, I gave you 20 different things to look at in your life, and you chose not to do it, so restart.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a viable option. I'll go with that.
Yeah, I don't know, it's something I've always thought.
Reincarnation.
Yeah, I mean, it's like,
how do we know, right?
We don't. That's why I have that theory. But as we covered a lot of what I wanted to cover. There's a couple more things. I want to talk about juicing versus blending, since you mentioned the juicing, because I'm trying to figure out what's optimal to me. Do I drink smoothies? Do I drink more juice? Do I drink a mixture of both? Why would I drink one or the other?
Okay.
Is it better to, you have some sources that say it's better to like cook kale, better to eat kale raw. Like what for people listening, I know my mom is probably listening, my brother too.
Hi, Mom.
We're all trying to figure out what is optimal in a sea of information where everybody says that everything is optimal. So
Absolutely.
if you could just provide your insight on that, I'd love to hear.
Okay. So I am #team juicing, but that doesn't mean that I don't enjoy a good smoothie every once in a while. I actually do both. My kids love smoothies. They also love juice. The difference between juicing and smoothies, and this is a very common question I get. They'll say like, what type of blender do you use for your juice? And I'm like, no, it's not juice. I know. But so with juicing, I look at that more as a meal replacement, because if you take a look, if I was to show you everything that I juice, it's a big bowl. I have one of these like commercial kitchen silver bowls, like it's ginormous, and I fill that with vegetables and fruit, mainly vegetables. So if I was to sit down with the knife and fork, I couldn't possibly eat all of that real food in that bowl, but I can drink it. Okay. And so now if you look at smoothies, if you put all that in a blender, you're going to be full. And so I look at smoothies as more of a meal replacement, and I look at juicing as more of an injection of vitamins, minerals, micronutrients. So it's more medicinal for me. Not to say that juicing or that blending is not medicinal, but with blending, there's a real danger of putting way too much fruit, which is okay because you're not taking away the fiber, but it can be a lot of sugar. It's simple sugar. It's not refined, which is bad, but it's still, your ratios can be lopsided with blending. And with juicing, I feel that you can have access to more of those unlocked micronutrients that are sometimes hidden up in the fiber. But having said that, when I'm in a smoothie mood, I use predominantly, Costco makes a lot of great frozen blueberries. And here's something interesting about blueberries. Even though you buy organic blueberries, there's still some residual pesticides on organic blueberries. And they actually have the highest concentration of even organic pesticides. So what I've found is that, there are like Roundup, like GMO pesticides, and then there are organic or naturally occurring pesticides. But for whatever reason, blueberries have the highest concentration of pesticides. But I've found that the blueberries at Costco are the cleanest blueberries I've ever found. And you can taste it. You can taste the difference. So I use the Costco frozen blueberries. And then I'll just throw in greens from our garden. We have a lot of, we've got 6 raised garden beds and another huge area for gardening seasonal vegetables. But I'll just throw in garden greens. And then on top of that, I'll put some moringa powder with some chia seeds.
Moringa, I want to talk to you about that because I've been using moringa and I love it. I use it as a base for my acai bowls. I mix that with like berries and some spinach sometimes.
Yeah.
And I don't even know. I don't really know the taste of it because I've never isolated it. But when I've been adding it lately, it tastes so good. And I guess it's really good for you.
It's so good for you. Moringa is one of the most nutritionally dense foods on the planet. But it's specifically the Moringa oleifera tree, which is, I believe, native to like India. But Moringa has just like, I don't know the exact measurements, but I believe it has something like 5 times more iron than kale, 5 times more calcium than spinach. I mean, it's just the nutritional value of moringa is just multiplied over, kale, spinach, and other leafy green. Not every day, but whenever I do smoothies, I always throw in the moringa powder on top of it, just because it gives me that extra kick. And then I'll use coconut water or some almond milk to mix in there.
So you would recommend always trying, like if you're looking at your day, 80% vegetable, 20% fruit?
Yes, ideally, you want to be in that range or even less fruit if possible. There is a school of thought that says you need to eat your fruit and drink your vegetables because you're eating the fiber along with it, which helps to digest it and metabolize it. And you're not just getting that hypoglycemic response or that sugar rush. But I found that, especially for people who are new to juicing, it's got to taste good. The first one has got to taste good, because if they're just taking like a wheatgrass shot or they're just, drinking nothing but greens, it's not going to taste good and they're not going to keep doing it. So in the spirit of daily juicing, I think 80-20 combination is good.
Well, and I also think it's what I've been trying to do. I have this green juice. It's spinach, cucumber, kale, and orange. But what I've been trying to do is slowly lower the content of orange. So I like the orange taste right now, but then I try to add less and less and less as we go along to get my body adjusted to the taste, as opposed to just removing it and being like, oh, I don't want to drink this.
Absolutely. There is another really easy juice recipe that I use all the time. It's ABC. I mean, everybody knows their ABCs, and that stands for apple, beet, and carrot.
I do apple, beet, carrot, ginger, and apple, beet, carrot, ginger, and sometimes pear.
Oh, nice.
Sometimes I'll add pear, but it's a great one. It doesn't taste. I think the apples and the carrots provide for a nice balance between the vegetable fruity taste. It's not overly sweet, but overly tart, like a vegetable.
Right.
The ginger, if you like ginger, like I add that, it's a little kick. And
I love ginger, a little bit of spice, a little bit of hotness,
I
love ginger.
I love it too.
But with beet juice, that's on a whole nother level. Like for all these no meat athletes and these triathlon runners who are vegan triathletes, and beet juice is essential for that. And I've done it too. I call it rocket fuel, because like if I drink beets, I tend, like when I go out for a jog, like my endurance is just multiplied, because beets oxygenate. It allows for a higher concentration or more intake of oxygen, and it does increase your endurance.
Interesting. So, I didn't know that. I actually, beets have been one of those things that for some reason my body is really intuitive with them. Sometimes I despise them. Like I'm like, I don't want beets. And other times I'm like, I could use a beet juice right now. It's very interesting with beets. Other vegetables, I can more easily be like, oh, I'll have it, sure. But beets is something my body has to be asking for, interestingly enough.
You can't beat them.
So my final question for you, well, I don't know if it's my final question, but we're kind of, as we close, do you target fruits and vegetables for certain things? Some people will do like a grape juice cleanse for kidney function, or, targeting other vegetables for certain healing functions. Do you take that approach, or is it more of like, I just want to get these in my body because they all have their own benefits?
Yeah, I think it's more of the latter for me. I think a diet of real food is going to mitigate your chances for disease. Now, having said that, if on the rare occasion, because I think I can count the times that I've gotten a cold in the past 5 years on one hand, but on the rare occasion when I start to get a sniffle, I will reach for ginger. I will reach for turmeric. I'll make a turmeric tonic with, I'll juice some turmeric roots and throw in some carrots and lemon and maybe a small orange just for taste. And turmeric, I mean, I'll down that. I'll drink apple cider vinegar. That's part of my daily ritual too.
How much of that do you drink per day?
The ACV? I will drink, really, sometimes I'll mix it into a glass of water, like a glass this size, like 8 ounces of water. I'll drop like a capful and a half in there, or I'll just take a swig. I know people say not to do it, but I shoot it.
I feel it in my nose when I just pictured you taking a swig. Ooh.
It's an acquired taste for sure, but if you can drink kombucha, you can drink apple cider vinegar. And, that's ACV has been around for thousands of years. That's one of the healing tools that Hippocrates used to use to heal people, was apple cider vinegar and honey, raw honey. But so, yeah, I mean, I'll do things like that. I use essential oils a lot as well. Because I live here in South Texas, in like the allergy capital of the United States, where we've got everything from mountain cedar, we've got pollen, we've got mold, we've got ragweed, we've got grass, we've got dust, we've got dander, we've got everything. Everything we've got here in San Antonio. And so if my allergies are starting to act up, then I will use essential oils, peppermint oil, lavender oil, lemon, and I'll mix that into some local honey with some organic cinnamon and mix all that together. And that's called an allergy balm. And that is antimicrobial, antifungal, antibacterial. And that does the job.
Like a drop of each of the oils in the honey?
Yeah, depending on how much honey you're using, you would use like anywhere from 1 to 3 drops, of each oil with the cinnamon. Mix all that together, and you're good to go. Natural cures.
I love it. I used to get urinary tract infections all the time, and from the time I was a little girl, and I used to get antibiotics. I took so many cycles, and they just seemed to keep coming back. Now, if I feel one coming on, I take echinacea and D-mannose and cranberry.
Oh, yeah.
Boom.
For sure.
One day, I feel better, and I've even done some testing. So I get like the self-tests where I'll test and I see leukocytes in my, in my urine, and then all of a sudden, after a day of echinacea, cranberry, D-mannose, boom, it's gone. And people don't know this.
Why don't they know this? We have to help them. We have to get it out there. One quick little anecdote about apple cider vinegar is my daughter a few years ago. She had this condition called molluscum contagiosum. It sounds like Harry Potter. Yeah, it sounds like, but it's called molluscum contagiosum. And it's a little condition where she would get like these bumps on her skin. And when you scratch it, it spreads to other parts of the body. Like, so she was getting these little tiny bumps all over the place. So she was getting them, like on her face, on her arms, and like, if she was scratched anywhere, she would get them. And so we started researching, and we saw cases where these kids were just being put through like a chemical burn process and just lasering them off, and just racking up debt and thousands of dollars worth of medical bills. And the kids were just in so much pain. And I felt so bad for these kids who had to pursue that. So we decided, my wife and I, that we were just going to treat it ourselves holistically, because we were well into our way of on our journey collectively of transitioning our diet. And we would bathe my daughter, she would take a bath, and we'd throw in some apple cider vinegar, and that seemed to help somewhat. But then we took it to the next level, and we would soak some gauze in some cotton and soak it in apple cider vinegar and wrap it in gauze and put it on her overnight. And sure enough, the next morning we kept doing it, and they all disappeared.
Overnight.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so, you do like one section overnight, the next morning they would be gone. You'd move on to another section the next night, and those would be gone. Wow. But you're talking about a solution that is under $10.
And it's natural.
And it's natural, as opposed to spending thousands of dollars on freezing them off, lasering them off, chemically burning them off one by one, which never really treated it. And it was just like a bacterial infection. But yeah, natural cures. You'd be surprised at what you can cure with things that are in your pantry.
Or what you can cure by giving something up. I had seborrheic dermatitis my whole life, cradle cap, just flaky as shit, just everywhere. I feel like I would snow everywhere, every single day. And I went to the doctor. This was years ago. They gave me some weird steroid shampoo that I remember I used it a couple times, and it would tingle. And I was just like, this is so weird that it's almost like burning off, the scales and stuff. And I started researching it, and it was like some side effects is that it could seep into your scalp and like get into your bloodstream and all this stuff. And I was just like, what am I doing? And so I gave up shampoo completely, gave it up alongside fixing my diet, doing everything internally. I don't wash my hair now for 2 weeks. I don't use shampoo, no flakes, no nothing, by simply not doing something that I was, I don't even put anything on my scalp, you know, and it was something I was doing.
That's great.
It's crazy. I could go on and on and on about natural cures for days, but
Me too.
The last question I have for you, people that are watching, you're not a medical professional. We know
Nor
this.
do I play one on TV.
Yes, exactly. We know this. So this is not medical advice, but if somebody's watching this that maybe has a chronic illness or cancer, or even like me, just wants to treat their body like you have a disease, to heal from something, anxiety, whatever it is, what would be the top things that you would recommend for somebody to start implementing? You kind of touched upon them already, but if you could just kind of run down like the meditation, juicing, apple cider vinegar, etc.
Absolutely. One of the best and easiest, fastest, quickest things you can do for your health is to drink lemon water daily. It's very simple, very rudimentary, but it's very effective. So it is alkalizing, raises your pH, because one of the things that we're not doing, especially in conventional Western medicine, is we are not looking at our gut pH levels or monitoring them kind of proactively. And I'm talking about gut pH and not blood pH. There's two different things. Blood pH is self-regulating. That doesn't change. But gut pH is something that is very important and is potentially a breeding ground for disease if you fall below the acidity line. So one of the best things, quickest, easiest, fastest things you can do is drink lemon water. Also, absolutely consume more green leafy vegetables. And I'm 100% plant-based, so I don't eat any chicken or red meat. I will occasionally eat some wild-caught salmon, very, very rarely. But for the most part, it's 100% plants. Plant-based diet is by far probably one of the best things that you can do for your overall health and wellness and longevity. Not to mention that it's really good for our planet and our climate and our ecosystem. Apple cider vinegar we touched on. It's a solution, again, under $10 that can regulate all of your body systems. It works topically. It works internally. You can ingest it. I use it as a salad dressing. That's what I love, is apple cider vinegar. That's all I put, is ACV. And if you are going to use ACV, make sure it's got the mother, which is the live system of live bacteria and enzymes. It's kind of like the SCOBY for kombucha. It's called the mother in apple cider vinegar. So make sure that if you're buying it, that it's got the mother. Juicing is something that I do daily, because that is like a multivitamin times 1,000. It's a real food, and it gets into your bloodstream immediately, bypassing and giving your digestive system a break. It gets into your bloodstream within 20 minutes, and it is a shot of micronutrients, phytonutrients, minerals, enzymes that you can use. And then along those lines, change your salt. I know we haven't talked about that, but table salt, typical iodized table salt, is actually fake salt. I use exclusively pink Himalayan sea salt because it does have naturally occurring iodine, naturally occurring minerals and enzymes that are very important for you. And we're also deficient in these iodine minerals and enzymes that table salt has. So you can change your table salt. And then another thing that you can do. Hey, how's it going? Looks like he's getting ready to do some yoga.
Yes.
Yoga. I recommend yoga for sure.
That's perfect. Perfect. We didn't even plan that.
Look at that. Which is a form of meditation. Yoga stands for union. So getting in touch with that mind-body connection. That's absolutely wonderful. Meditation by far is one of the best things that I've ever done, because it allows me to experience both the physical and the spiritual benefits, because it does have both.
So what do you do for meditation? What are you doing? What does your practice look like?
I've experimented with every form of meditation, whether it is using mantras, using mudras, the hand gestures, Kundalini meditation, transcendental meditation, guided meditation. But basically, I just sit down and shut the fuck up. We can all use a little sit down and shut the fuck up. So you just sit down and really just focus on your breathing. If thoughts come in, allow them to come in. Don't focus on them. Allow them to exit. And you really just try to get in touch or in tune. I think where people kind of get caught up with meditation is they think that something is supposed to happen. Like, how I'm supposed to feel a certain way, or I'm supposed to. Exactly. I'm supposed to see rainbows and unicorns, but in reality, you can get to that level, but start with 5 minutes of just quietness and just mindfulness, and then work your way up. I like to do a minute of meditation for each hour of the day.
Oh, so you spread it out. You don't do it all at once.
No, I do. So I'll do 24 minutes.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Of meditation for each hour of the day. Sometimes, if life gets in the way and I can only do a quick 5 or 10, then I'll do it. But I might do it multiple times, or I might, while I'm in traffic, while the light's red, I might close my eyes, and then people will start honking furiously. And then that's my cue to open my eyes and go.
What a way to come out of a meditation.
Yeah, exactly. Here, enlightened motherfucker, go. Step on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, meditation has physical benefits. It does lower anxiety, and it does lower blood pressure. It does make you more creative. I will sometimes go into meditation with a question and come out of it with the answer. And I'll also receive what I can only call downloads of information, just like creativeness that comes out of the air. And that's a good idea. Where did that come from? I do have some thoughts on that, on where it comes from, but that's going down another rabbit hole. Circling back to pH, one of the things that I wanted to mention is that we need to routinely test our pH and see how acidic we are, or see how alkaline we are. What I recommend to people who have cancer is to buy pH testing strips and then routinely test themselves throughout the day and see where they're at on that scale of 1 to 10.
Where do you want to be?
We should be at least, if you have cancer, then you need to be alkaline. So you need to be anywhere from a 6.5 to 7.
Okay, because I know the pH scale goes up to 14, right? So
yeah, it does go up to 14.
Anything above 7 is alkaline, right? So
anything
then do you want to be above 7, or you want to be at 7? There is such a thing as over alkaline. So it is balanced. So if you are measuring your pH 3 or 4 times in a day, when you wake up and you pee on the stick, you're going to be more acidic, because you're naturally more acidic in the morning. But you want to test it in the morning, test it at noon, test it in the afternoon, and then take the average of those 3 as kind of like your baseline. But if you are actively treating cancer, then yes, you should be, depending on the severity of it. I mean, you could be over alkaline for a while. Of course, you want to keep an eye on it and balance it out, but you definitely want to be at least, I would say, 7, if not a little bit higher. It sounds like this could be an interesting marker for health. I mean,
absolutely.
Testing your alkalinity. I never even thought about that. But
test your alkalinity.
Buy strips and then see where you're at.
You could buy strips at Whole Foods and immediately see where you're at, and just keep testing. And then, okay, like, I had coffee, so I'm probably going to be acidic, or, I just had green juice. Let's see how alkaline I am. And then you can really, you have personal metrics, even real time, where you can tell exactly how alkaline you are and how oxygenated you are, especially if you come back from exercising. And so you can have that real time information as to how healthy you are, or how likely you are to become sick based on your pH results.
So is there a danger zone? Were you in an acidic part when you were first starting to heal, that you were you can tangibly see you're at a 5?
Oh, yeah. Or something? Absolutely. You can see, and I did see, when I was below 6, and then I'm just chug some green juice, just keep drinking. You gotta raise it. That's one of the One of the easiest and most simple things you can do is monitor your pH and change your diet, change your lifestyle, and manage stress. We didn't talk about that, but meditation helps with stress, and we did touch on anxiety. But I have known people, a close friend of the family, who was in really good shape. She was maybe a little bit older than I am. She did yoga. She was a vegetarian, but she owned her own business, and she was highly stressed out, like every day, like high stress to the max. And ultimately she did develop colon cancer, and she eventually died from it. So
Wow.
Stress is a killer. It absolutely is a killer. It's a silent killer too.
Well, that's why I'm very, I agree with you on meditation. I use this analogy in my mind, or this visual. I feel if you envision your stress levels or your body like a car, and you're constantly pushing on the pedal, you're constantly revving to the max, right? Mm-hmm. Meditation, if you're doing it every single day or throughout the day, it takes the foot off the pedal and it allows you to kind of come back. If you don't have that place to come back to, you're constantly on the gas, revving up in the red, and you're overdoing it constantly. You can never give your body that break. But if you meditate every day, it's gas, back, gas, back. You have that place to fall back on, that grounded place.
Absolutely. That's a great analogy. And that's exactly what you're doing, is you're training yourself to calm the fuck down and just to, relax and be happy. Because what I found is that happiness, we often equate that or put a condition on our happiness, when in reality, happiness is a natural state that comes through you. It doesn't come to you, and you just have to uncover that and peel the layers of the onion. And meditation helps with that. And meditation also helps with that creativeness. You're essentially getting in touch and in tune with who you really are, and peeling back that layer of the onion, getting rid of all that other shit, and ultimately getting in touch and in tune with your higher self. That's what meditation does. Stress is
the killer. And I that's something that I fear, because I'm on a physical level, believe I am very healthy, but there's that piece, like I told you, I keep kind of running from it, is my stress. It's like I've tackled one part of me, but like you said, mind, body, spirit. And it's the abstract, it's the stress, it's diving into that
the intangible stuff.
Yep, that is so important, that I feel like many people, it's scary because there's not a clear answer. It's not make this green juice and put it in your mouth. It's very abstract.
Well, let me tell you what I experienced is when I was drinking gallons upon gallons of green juice daily, for X number of months, I experienced a detoxification physically, but also mentally. I began to think clearer. It's like that movie Limitless with Bradley Cooper, where he takes that pill and he's like, whoa. That's how I felt after green juice, and after my morning routine. That's how I felt. And that ultimately that clarity of mind led to a full-blown awakening that I had. And I remember the exact day and time and location of when it happened. It was like a physical wall hit me. I mean, it's like this beam of light that just hit me. And from that point on, I was a completely different person to this day. Because of that spiritual awakening that I had, which I directly attribute to changing my diet and detoxification and all of that green juice. Everything that I did ultimately led to that transformation.
Lots of people will say you got to start with the physical body first. Heal the physical body first, and then as you're healing and detoxifying, all the other stuff will come. I mean, hopefully, what will come.
Absolutely, yeah. And since that day, I mean, I was led down a spiritual path, and I was led down more of a mental path, and obviously the physical path. And I'm still on that journey to this very day. And it's a journey that won't end while I'm alive.
I believe it. I may start drinking a shit ton of green juice. Like right now, I probably drink one mason jar. This is 32 ounces. I'll drink 16 to 32 of my green juice. I'll drink 16 ounces or so of my beet, apple, carrot, and then sometimes I'll have celery separate. So I'll have like 16 ounces of celery in that. But I think I may start doing like 3 of these a day or something.
Do it. And you know, that's another thing is like, that's essentially like a juice fast. So that's a form of intermittent fasting, which is also all the rage these days. And I do that too. I just posted about intermittent fasting. That's another thing. 16-8. Yeah.
16, yeah, that's the common one.
That's what I do.
When you were doing the green juice, the high amounts of it, were you just eating raw too, only?
Yes.
You weren't cooking anything.
No, that's part of it. And
that's
just for
hard.
It can be a little challenging, but you know, if you are treating something like cancer, you've got to go in balls deep. I mean, you got to dive into this and just fully commit to it. That's what I did. But ideally, you know, the ideal diet should have some sprouted food, some cooked food, some raw food, and some fermented food. So if you take that acronym or make it into an acronym, it's SCARF, which kind of works.
So sprouted being SCARF, sprouted being.
So sprouted, you can sprout beans, like you can sprout, there's grains, like there's actually really good in my fridge, which is about 100 feet away from me. I buy these sprouted tortillas that I use to eat with. And sprouting just has a lot of added benefits to it. Any sort of sprouting food has more active enzymes and it's more bioavailable. So sprouting, and you can sprout your own beans too. You can make your own sprouts, or you can just buy sprouted foods.
So beans, are they alkaline? Because see, this is where I get confused because, for example, like the keto diet or other diets that are also apparently healing will say that beans are inflammatory, and there's certain science that shows that beans are inflammatory. So then what is right? You
can't, well, I couldn't survive without beans and lentils in general because they're a complete protein. I mean, beans are, it's part of every vegan or plant-based diet. You know, you can't do without it. But in terms of acidity, I have not ever experienced an adverse effect or reaction from eating beans. And you know, I do still routinely test my pH, and I've never experienced anything like that. So they're right for me. I mean, everybody's unique, you know, bio-individuality and all. So, you know,
I believe it. It's so hard when you see one source that says, yes, eat them, well, you know, and then another source that says, no, don't do it. It's like, for me, I'm just like,
Here's the thing is if we get into this mentality of one size fits all, even when it comes to holistic healing, then we're no better than any conventional doctor. Right. In reality, we have to do what works for us. We're all unique. So like, for example, some women can't drink kale. They can't have kale because it aggravates their thyroid. Some people, you know, have an adverse reaction to multiple things, and you'd have to just do an elimination diet and see what's working for you. And ultimately, you are the best healthcare provider. That's one of my mantras that I repeat over and over is nobody can provide health to you. It comes to you naturally. You are your own healer.
You're your own judge. You have to tune in and see what the hell's going on.
Absolutely. I mean, health doesn't come out of a needle, doesn't come out of a pill. You can't, you know, you can't stick it up your ass. You have to, I guess with the suppository you could, but again, that's like a pill.
Up the butt.
Up the butt. Yeah. Now there are, like, for example, I saw like CBD suppositories or like cannabis suppositories.
People ask me about them. For
sure. Now that I would try, but
there's some crazy experiments that were done. I believe it was on depression, where people were putting fecal deposits up their ass.
I heard about these fecal transplants, and I don't see myself ever doing that.
No, because it's bizarre, and I get the idea behind it because you're introducing healthy bacteria into a place that doesn't have healthy bacteria, but it's someone else's bacteria. It's not your bacteria.
I don't need this shit. You keep your own shit.
Keep your own shit. Seriously. Wow.
I could go on for hours and hours. How much time do you have? Like, no, we're done.
Unfortunately, I have to go to my day. I mean, I could talk to you. I think the max on this YouTube live is 8 hours, man. We could just fill up the whole damn thing.
I've barely scratched the surface, Ashley.
I appreciate you coming on so much and sharing your story, and we've had a good amount of viewers, so I sincerely appreciate your time. But I wanted to end with just talking about what you're doing, your projects. You have a CBD company, you're writing a book. I'm going to tag all your information to your Instagram and all that stuff on, you know, the YouTube video,
okay,
and the posts and everything. But if you just want to kind of touch upon your current projects and what you're doing, just so everybody knows.
Yes, thank you so much. So I am launching a CBD company called TAO Plant Wellness, and TAO, Taoism, which we didn't get into, but the Eastern philosophy of Taoism is very, very special to me. The book, the Tao Te Ching, has changed my life, and I highly recommend, if you haven't read that, please go out and read it. It's amazing, and it's a philosophy that has completely changed my life and the way I think. So I named my CBD company TAO Plant Wellness. That is going to be launching here in about a month or so. And I also am in the process of writing a book called Awaken To Wellness, which essentially it's kind of like a roadmap or a guide for holistic healing. And these are the things that we've touched upon here and more that we didn't get to, but everything that I did to transform my life, mind, body, and spirit, and not just for cancer, but really just for anything, any sort of a cataclysm that you face, a personal crisis that you can use as a catalyst. That's what that book is going to cover. But there is a lot of information regarding healing cancer, healing your body, healing your mind, healing your spirit. So it's really an all-encompassing book that I'm really proud of and excited to get out. I also have a podcast, just like Ashley, that it's called Talking Shift, and we talk about all kinds of shift on there. Anything you should come on. We need to get you on the podcast.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So you got your own healing story that I think
I got a lot. I could go on and on and on.
Absolutely. So we'll get you on. And so I co-host that podcast with my good friend, my soul sister from another mister, Marianela Pereira. She is a TV personality who's been on the Travel Channel. She's hosted the Poker After Dark. She's been on ESPN. She's a travel blogger, and she's got a her own Instagram account called The Foodist. So I co-host Talking Shift with her. That's on all the platforms as well. And then lastly is I have a green preschool called the Lily Pad Garden School. We rebranded. It used to be the Lily Pad Child Care Center. Then after I got sick and I went through my transformation, we rebranded the school to the Lily Pad Garden School, because we threw out all the processed food out of the daycare, and we introduced real food into the preschool. Because how could I serve crap to these kids if I'm not eating it at home? So we've got, oh yeah, no, it's so awesome, and we love it there, and we're impacting so many families, and they're changing their lifestyles. We have a positive ripple effect out in the community. So we've got raised garden beds there. We grow seasonally. The kids, we've incorporated it into the curriculum. They go out and harvest the vegetables, and then we take them to the kitchen and we serve real food there. We make organic scratch-made baby food. We do mindfulness. We do yoga, and we do kindergarten readiness. So there is that learning aspect too, to get them ready for kindergarten. So that's I'm really passionate about that, and we're in the process of, we just recently expanded that operation to serve more kids in the community. We now have the capacity to serve up to 150 kids, and we're just at capacity now. But we do want to expand that model and continue growing that business, through other communities. And I would love to franchise that across the country, just to start them young, because you have to really shape kids' palates while they're young to get them to crave and recognize real food, as opposed to high fructose corn syrup and food dyes and refined sugar. You've got to, health starts at an early age. And if I can, it's exactly forming a good habit early on to prevent kids from suffering and going through diseases like cancer and diabetes, which is prevalent. I mean, it's exploding. Cancer rates are through the roof. It's 1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women are being diagnosed with cancer on a daily basis. So we're doing everything that we can. And of course, my Instagram account at The Green Health Project, you can find me on there, where I share information over a variety of subjects related to mind, body, and spirit on a daily basis. That's everything.
Wow. You got a nice laundry list there of a lot of stuff that you're working on. I love new projects and stuff. I'm actually very interested in coming on the podcast, so we can definitely talk about that later. But sincerely, I appreciate your time. I like I said, I found you years ago, and it's just crazy where the universe goes. Like I'd never envisioned that I'd be sitting here talking to you right now about your story. I feel very honored that you shared your time with me today. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for having me on. And I really like that you have a podcast. And I think that's what it takes to keep spreading the message. We all need to broadcast our truth and our message of our own stories. And I really like your authenticity. And I think that's going to serve you really well with this. So kudos to you.
Appreciate it. All right. Well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop the broadcast, but you and I will still be able to keep talking. So we are going off live. Thank you, Tom. 3, 2, 1.